Anything that companies need to think about differently if they're focusing on targeting this particular market segment, Generation Y, the millennial generation?
Well, I think one thing I'd say is interesting is the tools to be an entrepreneur have become so democratized, and it's so easy to start businesses that you see a lot of people who are part of this generation have the resources to start and address this generation on a worldwide basis, which is great for them because they understand it. It's funny for me because I'm just at that age where I'm 38, I'm actually old, but I still feel like like I could relate to that generation. It's an incredibly dangerous instinct as an investor because you can overvalue your ability to relate. I think the classic thing people talk about is people like us will sit around and think Twitter's this great phenomenon of the youth, and then you'll talk to young people and they say, oh, Twitter, that's for old people. And you're like, wait, hold on a second. I thought this was a young people's medium. So I think the fact that we can back entrepreneurs who are of this age and understand what these people want is pivotal. And a lot of those things that you list out are just the characteristics of youth. A lot of those are people who are in that age range and have been over time. This, keeping it real has always been an element of that. The desire for entertainment, the incredible adoption of technology and the multitasking. I think that's new and can be addressed.
I think that's a great point. It's so much cheaper to start a company now than we don't actually have to rely on our instincts as to whether or not something will be adopted by whether it's millennials or anybody else. You can just wait and see, and you don't have to rely on your instincts. You can see that the usage is there and it's growing, and that's one of the things that I think is really exciting about investing now is you get a lot more data that allows you to see that behavior is of this particular sort or that particular sort. So you see social gaming, for instance, that's really exploded over the last, call it 18 months, 12 months. Not necessarily something that people would have predicted, although there have been investments in gaming before and in social before. I think Twitter is a good example where the growth has been driven not by millennials, not by youth, but in any event, you didn't have to decide whether or not that was going to be something that was going to happen. You could see it happening, and I think, as you say, we are starting to get outside of the band where our intuition is necessarily good. I would say that we're approaching a bit of a time poor phase in our lives. I think that's probably true of a lot of people in this room. And so the behavior of the time poor relative to the behavior of the time rich can be very, very different. And the millennials are very much in this time rich phase of their lives where they're not necessarily looking for a utility or efficiency or things that are going to save time. They're actually looking for things that are going to fill time. It's about entertainment, it's about gaming, it's about communicating with your friends and keeping up with people, and that's a very different use case that, again, you can just see the behavior.
I see 4 characteristics in terms of unlocking the millennial market that you have to understand in the core psychology. This generation is the digital native. They grew up with these different formats, whereas we are more the immigrant generation. We're learning these as opposed to being exposed to them from an early age. The first characteristic is that they are cloud ready. So everything is multi-platform, multi-format, and usually through a browser from day one. So it's important to be frictionless when going towards them. I think they're generally resistant to downloads and heavy clients. The second is that they're weaned on free-to-play mechanics and microtransactions through gaming, and we'll see those business models applied to other areas in the media industry. Third is everything comes with a social graph. So social graph will be an overlay, a fabric of functionality weaved into all aspects of everything they do and consume. And the last piece is they do not consume content, they self-express with it. So unless content is sort of a service for them that they use, reinterpret, share, retweet, whatever, it will have no value to them. They don't believe in purchasing content as a packaged media anymore. It has to have a two-way channel back.
The other dynamic related to this is not just how it impacts consumer businesses, but also the enterprise. And I've seen a wave of really interesting companies that are enterprise models, but that have more of a consumer kind of DNA or a consumer twist to them. So I think the trends that you talk about in terms of how to market to this generation apply as much on that side as on the consumer side. So, and there are models that have consumer characteristics in the design of the product and the usability of the product, sort of seeping into the enterprise, and also in the distribution model, where components of the product are put out for free to businesses, and it's either a self-service model for sales or an upsell. as opposed to a classic kind of enterprise model. So in our portfolio, it's companies like LinkedIn or Constant Contact, or it's from the panel, it's companies like HubSpot that we were just talking about behind here, or SurveyMonkey that raised a bunch of money recently. There are just a lot of interesting examples of companies that are at the intersection of consumer and enterprise, or I would call kind of enterprise with a consumer DNA.
Yeah.